At 10:30 a.m., the U.S. Supreme Court ended months of legal battles with just 2 words. No debate, no explanation, no dissent. 72 hours earlier, a secret legal agreement was filed that changed everything. What happened next may redefine power, privilege, and accountability in America. At exactly 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Supreme Court of the United States issued a decision that instantly changed the course of a major federal case. The ruling was brief, only 2 words, but its impact was enormous. Application denied. All 9 justices agreed. There were no dissents, no concurring opinions, and no explanations attached. With that single sentence, months of legal maneuvering came to an abrupt end. What makes this ruling extraordinary is not just its unanimity, but its timing. The Supreme Court's decision came precisely 72 hours after Melania Trump's legal team submitted a confidential proffer agreement to federal prosecutors. In that agreement, she outlined the evidence she was willing to provide in exchange for potential immunity from prosecution. 2 major legal events occurred within 3 days of each other, and the sequence strongly suggests they were closely connected. This is not speculation, rumor, or anonymous sourcing. Every detail involved comes directly from court filings, sworn legal documents, and official Supreme Court orders. These are public records available for anyone to verify. What follows is not opinion, it is what has now become legally official. At the center of this development is a critical legal decision by Melania Trump herself. She voluntarily waived spousal privilege. Under U.S. law, spousal privilege normally prevents a husband or wife from being forced to testify against their spouse. However, this protection belongs to the witness, not the defendant, and it can be waived voluntarily. In this case, it was. According to the proffer agreement, the evidence she is prepared to provide falls into 3 primary categories. The first involves financial documents that allegedly show awareness of dishonest property valuations. These include joint tax returns signed between 2014 and 2020, filings that both spouses certified under penalty of perjury. Asset valuations play a central role in these returns, affecting income, deductions, and tax liability. If property values were inflated when presented to banks to secure loans, but deflated when reported to tax authorities to reduce taxes, that discrepancy could constitute both bank fraud and tax fraud. A joint signature places potential legal exposure on both parties who signed. The second category of evidence involves communications. These include emails, text messages, and discussions related to property valuations, loan paperwork, and financial representations. Some of these communications reportedly occurred prior to meetings with lenders and accountants, and prosecutors already possess copies of several messages referenced in the agreement. The third category is direct testimony. She is prepared to testify as a corroborating witness, supporting statements already given under oath by accountants, bankers, and property appraisers. In federal investigations, corroboration is crucial. When multiple witnesses independently confirm the same facts and documents support their accounts, it creates a powerful evidentiary pattern that is extremely difficult for any defense to overcome. Because the Supreme Court rejected the emergency appeal without issuing a stay, there are no remaining legal mechanisms to block this testimony. No further appeals are available, no procedural delays remain. The grand jury is now free to hear this evidence, potentially within days. The legal clock is moving forward, and for the first time in this case, nothing is standing in its way. With the Supreme Court's emergency appeal denied, the legal process now moves forward without obstruction. The grand jury is free to hear testimony, review documents, and evaluate evidence without any remaining claims of privilege or delay. This moment represents a turning point, not just in this case, but in how the justice system responds when power, wealth, and influence collide with accountability. Grand juries in federal cases typically meet on a fixed weekly schedule. With prosecutors already prepared and a proffer agreement in place, testimony could be heard within days. Once that testimony is completed, prosecutors face a strategic decision. They can either use the new evidence to strengthen the charges already on the table, or they can pursue a superseding indictment, one that adds new charges based on newly confirmed facts. A superseding indictment is not symbolic. It signals escalation. It means investigators believe the evidence now supports additional criminal exposure beyond what was previously charged. In many federal cases, this step dramatically increases pressure on the defense and reshapes the entire trial strategy.
One detail being closely examined involves conversations connected to loan applications and property valuations. If prosecutors establish that false statements were knowingly made to financial institutions and confirmed by more than one participant, that opens the door to conspiracy charges. Conspiracy is a separate offense, and it does not require the crime to succeed, only that an agreement existed and at least one concrete step was taken. The trial itself is already scheduled, and with no further appeals available, that date is expected to hold. Courts rarely tolerate delay tactics once the Supreme Court has spoken so clearly. From this point forward, every motion, every witness, and every filing moves the case closer to a jury. Beyond this individual case, the broader implications are significant. This situation reinforces three long-standing principles of American law. First, spousal privilege cannot be used as a shield when cooperation is voluntary. Second, emergency appeals cannot be weaponized to stall investigations. And third, the law applies equally, regardless of political status, public influence, or past office. For decades, powerful defendants have relied on procedural complexity to slow cases down until public attention fades. This time, the system moved quickly, decisively, and without hesitation. The Supreme Court's one-sentence rejection sent a message louder than any written opinion ever could. What happens next will unfold step by step through testimony, filings, and court decisions. But one thing is now beyond dispute. The process is moving forward, and nothing is stopping it. The documents will be reviewed, the witnesses will speak, and the evidence will be tested in court, where facts, not power, decide outcomes. If you want clear, fact-based breakdowns of hidden legal battles, powerful court decisions, and stories the headlines only skim over, stay connected with World Dark Files. This channel follows the paper trail, court records, sworn filings, and official rulings to uncover what really happens behind closed doors. No noise, no rumors, just the facts that shape history. Follow World Dark Files for updates as this case develops and for deep dives into the legal stories that define power, accountability, and truth.